we have the world champion of comedy joining us right now.
It's a world champ.
Yeah.
All right, we got it, and we're gonna have to talk about the hats. We're gonna
talk about the hats. So I was kind of, you know, if we didn't have any copyright problems, Judah, I definitely wanted to play Mankind's Crash theme. You coming on because you totally have you've definitely got the look down. And if you're on Long Island too, then that just
all right. So this is a way bigger deal for me because I was a big 30 Rock fan. Okay, he didn't watch. He doesn't understand what he was missing. He doesn't understand.
I haven't seen it. I heard it's good. I haven't seen it.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
it was awesome. I found it to be fairly brilliant, and I thought every single character was so perfect on that show. And I still have references to that.
I've been meaning to check it out. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. So what's going on? What are you up to?
Oh, you know, just trying to fight fascism with karate and jokes, you know.
What works better?
Well, they're both effective, you know. It doesn't have to be one or the other, really.
You're both. All right, so explain the hats. For anybody who doesn't understand, the hats is a big deal, at least. And is that something that you did for 30 Rock, or was that
for that? Oh, okay. All right. So
the hats.
Let's see. So 30 Rock, I think we started filming that in, I don't know, 2006, something like that. I think that was like 2006 to 2012, somewhere around there. Or maybe it was 2005. Maybe it was 2005 we started filming. I can't remember. But anyways, so I started doing stand-up in 1989. And I've been making my own hats since, I don't know, somewhere in the 90s, I guess.
Okay.
And so my act is, I've been doing stand-up a while. My act is, changed over the years. And for a long time, my hats always said, when I did stand-up, they would always say world champion on it.
Right.
And it meant different things over the years, and it still means different things. And it was basically a satire of, throughout the act, the theme was a satire of narcissism, of personal narcissism, right? And then over the years, the past 10 years or so, it sort of morphed into my stand-up act, a satire on national narcissism, the narcissism of a whole country, as well as other things. I'm not going to get into that now. But so for 30 Rock, I used to do a fair amount of movies, and before I did 30 Rock, I was probably doing, stand up every night and then doing probably 3 to 5 movies a year, from anywhere from working from, 2 days on a movie to maybe 2 months on a movie. And then 30 Rock came about. I wound up getting a part in that, auditioning for that and getting a part in that. I didn't know anyone on that show. And, so that's a different kind of a gig. Before you do one episode of a TV show like that, you have to sign a 6-year contract before you film one episode.
Wow.
So as a guy who's used to instability, who prefers probably a high level of instability and chaos, signing a 6-year contract is kind of scary. Now I know it's work, it's, but also, I mean, the job can end in a week too. They could cancel the show in the week, but in case it goes 6 years, you have to sign on for 6 years. So, and it's a TV show that films, I don't know, 8 or 9 months out of the year. So if I'm playing a character who's not me, and I've done work in movies where I've played characters that look nothing like me. I've cut off all my hair, I've colored it, I've straightened it. Walk a certain way, talk with a different accent. So if you're doing that for like a month straight, where you don't look like you don't talk like you, it can wear on you psychologically. So when I got the part on 30 Rock, and before I agreed to do it, I was like, look, if I'm going to do this, I want to be able to look like me on it, so that it's at least not going to be fucking, more mentally draining. So. And they were cool with that. And then I said, all right, for the hats, I'm not going to make one that says world champion, because that's what I wear on stage. And I'm not playing me. I'm playing someone who looks like me, but I'm not playing me. So I was like, well, how about Frank, the character I played, in a passive aggressive way, can maybe put things on his hat that, because I'm a writer on the show that Liz Lemon is the head writer on. Liz Lemon's my boss on the show.
Of course, I know this, but
right. So right. For people like, so I'm like, well, how about Frank, passive aggressively, maybe putting some names of some rejected sketches that he wrote on his hat, so I'd have stuff like, karate sluts, and there's no way Liz Lemon's going to greenlight that, he's sexist and, rightfully so on her part. But I'm like, maybe it'd be cool if, Frank's doing stuff like that. And it can also be another way, maybe Frank, we're being like, almost in a sense where he's a little shy, or maybe if he's testing out jokes, he might put them on his hat. This way he doesn't have to maybe bomb by verbally telling someone a joke. Or it can just be extra jokes that can add to a scene. Like there was one scene where my character and the character named Lutz.
That was the best.
We have a scene where we come back to the office and Liz says, where were we? No, she says, where we're going. We're leaving the office. She says, where are we going? And we go, oh, we're going to Times Square to rip off tourists. No, to pretend that we're tourists. So we're doing some kind of a prank or scam thing. So I wore a hat that said Olay. So it's just a little extra joke for people watching it to maybe catch something else or another joke or had a little bit of depth. So that's what that was. But for stand-up, it's a totally different thing.
Right. I love that show so much. I'm serious. There are still things that come up. There's our campaign volunteer, Bryson. We have this volunteer, Bryson. He's Kenneth. And when I tell you that, he's Kenneth. And I wish that this guy understood what I was talking about when I tell you that that's who it is. I have references to that all the time. And I actually pulled up an episode today and watched when you guys had to drop trowel because they ran the emergency and you're taking off your clothes and you got
me and Watts are we get into our underwear or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, that seemed to happen to us a lot. Yeah, we were kind of we played scumbags on that show, and we were always trying to prank people or somehow do something nefarious, and it pretty much always backfired on our characters. We might pull off one prank, but then we get pranked worse.
I thought it was great. You think you were scumbags. I just think you were kind of like lovable losers. Yeah,
well, that's another way of saying it. We were likable scumbags. It was a mix of laughing at us and with us. I mean, the show is obviously very well written, storyline and joke wise, but our characters were basically scumbags. Certainly mine was. Yeah, but
we are speaking with Judah Friedlander, a very well-known comic in what has become. Yes, well, somewhat of an anti-comic era. Unfortunately, that's what the last several years has been like. We actually shot you a message. I don't know if you have your phone with you, but if you can retweet the link that we sent, want to get this out to as many people as possible right now.
Do you tweet?
Oh, well.
What's that?
You tweet, right?
Twitter. I do have a Twitter account.
There you go. So you're already ahead of me.
So what I do want to ask you, which I think is very.
I don't have a phone though. I don't have a phone.
Well, lucky you. You can just work off analog.
Look, if people need me, I just show up. Okay, that's what I do.
Well,
heroes do.
So power's in the hat. But I wanted to ask you what it's been like observing how comedy has changed in the Trump era, because this, comedians are supposed to be anti-establishment, and all too often I've been seeing so many that are, they're not challenging power the way that you would think that they would be.
They're supposed to be.
What's been like that?
Well, these are all great questions. All great questions. And I just want to discuss your premise a little bit about what comics are supposed to be. Now, I agree with you. It would be really cool if comics were supposed to be, or in general, were anti-establishment, speaking truth to power. I don't know the history of comedy if that's actually true, though. I think there's probably a lot of history of comics just being a shill for the establishment, maybe. It depends how they're used. It's kind of like, it can be like any kind of a thing where it can be used for good or bad. Now, I agree with you. I think not just, since the previous administration, but I think for, a good 10 years or more, just like society, corporations have gotten more and more powerful. and have had more of an influence over people's lives, whether they know it or not. I think you've seen that in the entertainment business, including the comedy business, where it's, it sucks. And comedy's a bigger business than ever, and it's gotten more corporate than I certainly ever remember it. It's gotten more self-promotional with, the introduction of social media. I mean, if you were a comic 20 years ago, the only way you could tell people you were doing a show was to take an ad out in a newspaper. Pretty much nobody did that. Get on a radio show, local radio show, or literally get a photocopy machine and some magic markers and put up flyers around your neighborhood or the town that you're visiting. There wasn't the power that there is now of that. So when there became more social media tools, there became more ways to promote. And with YouTube and stuff like that, people argue, oh, comedians actually have more power now than ever. Well, in a sense, that's true, but in a sense, it's not, because it's actually the people who have the best marketing skills are the best at furthering their comedy career now. Not necessarily. I mean, how many viral videos have you seen that are really not quality, but they have millions of hits? So quality doesn't lead to quantity. So back to your thing though about as far as like network television goes, it's hard to see any quality comedy that's of the social commentary ilk, if you will, or political ilk, if you will. A lot of it's just sort of like superficial jokes that are anti-Trump, that don't really hit hard to the core of the problem.
I find it low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. It's just like, everyone's been making fun, doing, easy jokes on Ted Cruz this last week. And meanwhile, the Republicans in over 40 states are changing the voter laws and disenfranchising voters. It's like, that can be talked about, so.
But it's not funny.
No, it can be funny. It can be funny too. It's more difficult maybe to do humor about that, but it's not, it doesn't mean it's not going to be as funny, so there's a lot of, comedy that's, just not that high quality comedy. Although once in a while, I think some shows do some good stuff. I've actually seen this of all the, I don't watch that much TV, but Seth Meyers' show, I've actually seen do some things where they get pretty in depth once in a while and do some pretty good stuff in one of their segments. But overall, a lot of it's just kind of like a generic monologue joke. It's almost like political humor has become mainstreamed. It's become pop culture. So if you're doing a joke about Trump or whatever, that's the same thing as doing a joke about the Kardashians in the way that it's often done on network television, where it's very superficial. It's not often that hard hitting. I'm not saying it never is, but often that's the case. So, and then if you look at it with comedian, if I'm talking too much, feel free to interject.
No. It's all good. This is good.
No, but it's like, if you look at it, as far as comedy goes, I mean, there's more people doing it, and that's great. Now, comedy, the comedians who are doing comedy now, it's gotten much more diverse, and that's great. But it's I don't know, the corporateness of it has gotten worse, and the seek for fame has gotten worse. I think like 30 years ago, becoming a famous comedian, I don't even know how many comedians really thought that was possible, but they went into it anyways, and when you put fame in there, then you have to wonder why people are doing comedy. They can just do anything. So it's like, so if most comedians want to be famous, if most want to be rich, then comedy's not the thing they're interested in the most or care the most about. So if they want to get famous and get rich, they're going to want to have to stay within the system of Hollywood, right? In general.
Yep.
And, you know, the myth that Hollywood is a bunch of left-wing loony commies is a myth. Most of it is not. You know, who owns most of the studios? Who owns all of the studios? It's not left-wing progressive people or organizations. It's some of the biggest corporations in the world who are always going to lean right-wing. So,
you got the four horsemen. It used to, you know, Weinstein used to be one of them, but you have Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen, and they basically run the whole show. And everything is kind of, you know, it's sort of like controlled. You can only take it so far. And then I also think, you know, one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is we're living. There's a lot more censorship now. There's a lot more of things that you can't say. There's a lot more of this oversensitivity.
I call it overwoke.
Yeah, well, overwoke. I do think.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a very tricky thing. It's very tricky, the whole stuff with that, because a lot of time, I mean, I guess it used to refer to as the PC people, right? Yeah. Where in my opinion, a lot of times they're correct. And the things they're fighting for is correct. Do they overreach? Do they get it wrong sometimes? Of course. Do they ever admit they get it wrong? I don't know. If they do, probably not enough. Now, on the other hand, you have so many people who are pro First Amendment, yet they use it as a mask for hate speech. You know, and not just hate speech, but hate activism for open bigotry. You know, so it gets really confusing, you know. So it's like I take every case individually. And so things are, it's tricky times, you know. I'm someone who always fights for human rights. And, you know, and then if you look at a lot of the people who are, you know, I mean, there are people who are for free speech and who mean it, but then there are often who use it in a bad faith way. You know, well, they'll be all for free speech and against the woke stuff, but yet they'll never defend people at a Black Lives Matter march, you know, because they're bigots, you know. So it's a interesting thing.
So wait, I just want to ask, speaking of free speech, what are your thoughts on Julian Assange?
Well, Assange, I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but from the little bit that I know, it's what's being done to him and is extremely dangerous. So it seems like, you know, it needs to be supported. You know.
So we're planning a live stream telethon on March 20th from 2 to 6 Eastern time for Pardon Assange. We've gotten a bunch of content creators and people to come on.
Cool.
And I'd love for you to come on. Like, I don't know if you would be interested in coming on and doing a bit or something like that. It would be really cool. Anytime within
just hit me up. I can probably do it. So
all right, cool. So John, reach out to Judah. Yeah, I mean, we're breaking it up into like different segments, but anything that you would be willing to give of your time that could make that remotely more entertaining than it otherwise will be, as a bunch of just other, because it's gonna be a bunch of talking heads like me sitting around, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but
blah,
this would be, this should have a sizable audience, and to give you an opportunity to basically do a bit. Like, you're not, this is not, you know, just conversation.
No.
Right.
Yeah, you could, whatever. I mean, we're just trying to bring as much attention simultaneously to this issue. We want everybody to be flooding Biden's office and the AG's office, demanding that they drop the charges against Julian Assange. The fact that he's being tried prosecuted under the Espionage Act is outrageous.
Yeah, you always know when the power players, when they're really against something, is when they never bring it up. You know, like so, like it's never on the main. You know, if you look at the mainstream TV news, it's never on there. And that's because they really don't want to. Like, you'll see that with protests a lot, you know, like protesting has gotten mainstreamed in the past few years. Mm-hmm. You know, I think it started with the first women's march after what was it,
2017.
The pink hats.
You know, look, and I'm all for that march. I support that march, but it got mainstreamed, and then marches became, you know, cool to go to, cool to show on TV. Whereas before, pretty much the only time they would ever show a protest on TV is if some violence broke out, and they kind of show it in a way sort of discouraging people from speaking up for themselves. Yeah. You know, so it's So the fact that they don't even mention the Assange case, negatively or positively, it's just ignored. I think that speaks a lot, and think about why that is.
I happen to love. We do have a question. Let's jump to that real quick. So, what does Mr. Friedlander think will happen to the future of stand-up and touring comedy, since many of the venues have obviously shuttered, and who knows if they will come back due to COVID?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard question to ask. I mean, I think eventually things are going to come back. But the other thing to realize is that most are probably open on some level. Most states haven't shut down.
Well, we're Florida. Nothing's shut down here.
Yeah, exactly. Most states are open. So now that's a whole other issue. I think that's dangerous to be having no restrictions on things. But I'm only doing shows right now I produce my own shows, about 3 a week. And it's pretty damn similar to a regular show in person, because I do them over Zoom. All the shows are pay what you want. Each show is about 2 hours. I do about an hour and a half set, and I have 2 to 3 comics going before me doing 10 minutes each.
Where can people see that? Like, where can we?
Just go to my Twitter or Instagram. I'm really unorganized. I don't even have a mailing list. So it's Judah World Champ on Instagram and Twitter. So I have a show like this Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern. I have a show. And then Friday daytime at 3 p.m. New York time, I have a show. Because like pre-pandemic, I would tour internationally a fair amount. So it's like nighttime for Europe and the Middle East at that point. But yeah, so I do it on Zoom, where the audience has the option to have their camera on and their microphones on. So I do crowd work, I do new jokes, and then I always hire someone, sometimes more than one person, to sort of do the tech. So if anyone's computer is causing an audio interruption, it can get taken care of immediately, and there's no audio disruptions throughout the show. So I'll have an audience. Let's say there's 60 people in the audience, 30 of them have their cameras on. It's a cool, fun, intimate show. Yeah, and it totally works.
That's awesome, actually. A Zoom gig. Like, that's great.
So I do those. I produce about 3 of my own a week, where I do a long set. And like I said, those are pay what you want. The minimum donation's $1, because that's what it's like set at. So, for $1, you can see a 2-hour show. That's I always have different comics on. And so it's, and as awful as these times are, there's a lot to talk about.
When you were able to travel, what would you say were some of your favorite places to go to perform? And
crowds, the crowd wise.
For some reason, Sweden is really good.
There you go.
Sweden kind of has a really good mix of, first of all, well-educated. Their world knowledge is very good. They speak better English than. Their English is easier to understand than the people in England. Like they have a really good. Their English is remarkable, and they kind of have the perfect energy of good energy, but not too out of control and rowdy. So they're not too well behaved. You don't want an audience too well behaved, and you don't want them too out of control. So Sweden's great. Yeah.
Sweden's good on everything, really.
Yeah. Berlin is great. Sometimes it can be a little too cool for school, kind of like some of your hipster Brooklyn rooms. Sometimes can be a little bit like, hey, it's about us. We're cool. We'll judge you and let you know if you're good enough for us to be watching. Sometimes there's a little bit of that, but Berlin's a fascinating city. Where else is great? I don't know. There's some. I mean, in general, I like I like as diverse of an audience when it comes to race, gender, and economics. I like the biggest mix possible, and open-minded, certainly.
We unfortunately have heard. We actually had David Cross on the show, and he actually did say that he's
not coming back to Florida anytime soon.
And unfortunately, we don't have a very good reputation on many fronts. But have you had any good experience in Florida? Has it been,
Yeah, I've had some good shows in Florida. Well, it's, first of all, every place it's not like, the mainstream media makes it out to be. It's like, okay, everyone in this state's in QAnon. Everyone in this state is in Neera Tannen's book club. Everyone in this state, it's not like that. Almost every city has, different pockets of people of, different ideologies. So I've had some great shows in Florida, and then, it just really depends of the venue that you're at, I mean, I'd say certain cities are, lean different directions than other cities, no doubt.
But I would think you'd get a certain crowd just being who you are. Like, you're going to get a certain type of audience to come and see you versus somebody who would go see somebody else. Like
yeah. But it's always a mix. It's a mix. But I don't think I have one type of demographic really. Like if there are people who know me only from 30 Rock, they'll be coming in. If there's people who know me from my stand-up, there might be some 30 Rock fans there, but it'll be a different group also, I also want to plug if I can just plug my stand-up special. It's probably like almost 4 years old at this point, but it's still all relevant. It's on Netflix, but it was made separately from Netflix. I made it 100% independently. And then after it was finished, it was licensed to them. So it's very different than the others. It's black and white. It's low budget, handheld cameras, and no cheesy audience reaction shots. Just and it's all jokes, crowd work, satire on.
What's the name of the special?
It's America is the Greatest Country in the United States.
I knew I can't believe I forgot the name.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so. You can't argue with that. Factually, I will argue with that. So check that out. The material I do now is all new material. I probably have 3-4 hours of new material since that came out, but Netflix hasn't returned my emails in a couple of years, so I don't know what's going on there. But no surprise. But
honest for them.
What's your process? Like, what I mean, to me, I have such an admiration for comedy. I think that it is so smart and so brilliant. It really requires you have to be bright to I think, or at least for me to appreciate the humor. Like, there's a level of intelligence involved in it. I also am not a fan of like stupid humor. I'm not like a Three Stooges person. I don't talk about your stupid humor stuff.
She doesn't like Jim Carrey type humor.
No,
like
I
that
don't.
Type of
it's all right. You don't have to. I mean, everyone's humor is subjective. So,
so what's your process? I mean, clearly you love stand-up, and clearly
that's always been my main thing. Yeah.
Any particular inspirations or guys that you looked up to, or ladies?
No, I mean, there's lots of people, but no one in like particular or anything. It's just, I did comedy. I used to do political cartoons when I was a kid, when I was like 10 and 11. And so I was always into comedy and always did a lot of art. And then when I was 16, that's when I realized you could do stand-up comedy. I didn't know that was I didn't know that it really existed or there was something you could do. So then I started writing jokes. Then I started when I was 19. And then, so it's always changing and progressing. But I always just carry around a sheet of paper. I always have a pen. And if something comes into my head, I write it down.
Old school.
And then I try to read a lot. And sometimes I get, I read mostly serious books on,
like him,
political theory, human rights. That's what I'm always reading about. So I often get, because I like to do satire and jokes about the most difficult things and the worst things, and to shed light on them. But it's all comedy. But
the one I'm reading,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The one I'm reading right now is called "Leadership in Times of Crisis" by Doris Kearns Goodwin.
That sounds so boring.
But if he likes, that type of,
sounds good. I'll check it out. Thank you. I haven't read that.
Judah, the one movie I did want to talk to you about, because the only celebrity I've ever encountered that my heart ever skipped a beat was for Springsteen.
We can go one episode without talking about Bruce Springsteen.
I happen to be from the same areas in New Jersey, and I was just curious what your experience was like working on The Wrestler, working with Mickey and working with Aronofsky, and what that was all. That
was
awesome.
great. Yeah, no, that was. Well, I have to go in a minute, but that was great. That was a cool movie. I read the script, and I was like, holy shit, I gotta fucking figure out a way to get in this. This is fucking good. Because, a lot of stuff I get is, it's not good, but, we're in a capitalist society that doesn't provide healthcare, so I gotta try to get jobs, So, there's no stand-up comedy union. There's no healthcare in stand-up comedy. So acting, if you do enough work,
you don't live in a cardboard box. Can we just?
Look, they say the outdoor air is safer, so I'm on the street.
Because you really this really looks like you're living in a box.
Look, I view people who live indoors as anti-environment. So, The Wrestler, I think was a great movie. Aronofsky, I was a fan of. I auditioned for it. Now, I had been a wrestling fan. I used to drive from New York to Trenton to Philly to go see ECW in the 90s. So, and I know some wrestlers. Mick Foley, I know. Brian Hefner on the Blue Meanie, I know. I know other wrestlers. So I talked with other wrestlers, some wrestlers who I knew for research. I campaigned a lot on my own, did a lot of work to try to really get that part. I did get it. And when we filmed it, it was the opposite style of 30 Rock acting. 30 Rock, you got to do word for word. You got to say it the way they want you to say it. The Wrestler was like being in a documentary, except they told you what to say beforehand. It was completely as natural and real as possible. So yeah, I was only there a couple days, but that was a great experience. Yeah,
I like that movie. I actually interviewed a wrestler. I introduced Matt Seidel, who Evan Bourne, and cool. It was cool. I didn't know really. I mean, I used to follow, but that was back when Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan was a thing.
I was into it.
That's nothing wrong with following at that time. Nothing.
No,
wrong.
I mean, my dad used to take me. Used to go I don't know if it was the third Wednesday.
You had a good father.
I did, and we always sat ringside. But I also knew that it was somewhat pretend, and I used to find it funny the people that really thought it was real. And this was back. Now I think most people know that it's just sort of athletic theater.
I was into it for a very brief period during the peak of the Attitude Era. I actually went to WrestleMania 15 in Philly, and that was obviously when Steve and Dwayne were basically at the top of the business. And
that was a great era.
It was. And the comedy. And listen, say what you want about Vince McMahon. When he puts himself in the storyline, especially as the bad guy, it is comedy freaking gold.
Yeah, no, when wrestling is done well, it's not always done well. I mean, many things are not always done well. But when wrestling is done well, it can be a great art form. It really can. And the wrestlers, talk about a hard life. They have it really hard,
They
that's
need
a tough living.
I want to unionize them.
That's one thing that Seidel talked about. There's,
they need to be unionized.
Trinity. Yeah, there's a number. Yeah. Listen, you get the right people behind it.
But 20 years ago, we tried to sort of do like a unionizing of the comics, but that didn't work. That one day it might happen, but
that would be cool too.
There's too many that don't want to do it.
The wrestlers are abused. They're abused.
A lot of people are. A lot of workers are. Yeah, that's the dynamic of humanity is abuse. If you look at human beings are the most destructive force the earth has ever seen. They've never seen anything like it before.
And we'll leave on this note since I know you got to run.
Perfect.
Just as, in my opinion, the greatest comic of them all once said, George Carlin said, "We are not going to destroy the earth. The earth is going to shake us off like a bad cold if we get out of line too much." And that's the truth. So
He was great.
Yeah. He was. And you are great too.
Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. We will reach out if you can do something for us on the 20th. That would be amazing.
Yeah, hit me up.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thank you for being you, my friend.
Much.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Have a great evening, brother.
You know it. Winners.
Take care, man.
Bye. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.